All right, guys, welcome aboard. Time once again for the weekly Mac Forum video chat. It's February 8th, 2016. You might be wondering why we're here on a Monday night instead of the usual Sunday. But of course, with last night being Super Bowl Sunday, we kind of decided, or at least I did, that maybe you might be more interested in the Super Bowl than in hearing me talk about Mac stuff. So we decided to move the show to Monday night. Hope you enjoy what we have. Uh, Sorry about that, Carolina Panthers fans. I know you were planning on a different outcome. Let's just take a look at what we got Mac related for this evening. First of all, we have currently over 286,000 Mac Forums members, and our newest one is Nora Truce. I hope I didn't mispronounce that. Welcome, and welcome to all of our new members. I want to remind folks, because I know from time to time we get comments from unregistered members. I want to remind everybody, if you are planning on just searching the forum and looking for answers, you can do that without becoming a member. But if you need to ask a question, you need to register first to do so. Um, there's no cost to registering, so no real downside there. Before you know it, you'll be making a positive contribution to the forum and answering questions from other Mac members. Let's get on with what we have lined up. First of all, if you have recently upgraded to El Capitan, then you need to check out an article from the Tech Radar site. They have quite a few tips and tricks relative to El Capitan. Many of those tips are old hat to those of us who updated early, but there's some interesting tips in there and tidbits if you are new to El Capitan. If I remember correctly, there are about 56 tips at this point that they have added there. A couple of other things that come to mind. I got a lot of stuff stacked up after being on hiatus for a couple of weeks. One of the things I want to mention to you is the gang over at Tidbits has some thoughts on correcting errors in the OS X user dictionary. Most of you know that if you find an error in a word and the OS highlights that word in red, when you right click on that word, one of the options there will be for the OS to learn that word, to learn the spelling. Well, if your hand slips and you accidentally pick the wrong thing and you tell it to learn this word that is now spelled incorrectly, it will do that. And Adam has published an article describing to you how to go about correcting this error. Okay, and whether or not how you correct it will depend on what app you're in when it happens. In some things like Pages, Text Edit, etc., you can control click the word and choose Unlearn. So you can essentially right click and choose Unlearn. In some apps like Safari, etc., you can't do that. What you have to do if you want to make that kind of a correction is to go into the main spelling dictionary and fix the problem. I won't go into excruciating detail here, but it essentially involves opening up your user library, your hidden library folder, finding the spelling folder, opening that, and looking for the local dictionary file, opening it in Text Edit and making the correction and then resaving the file. This could also be used to add a large number of words at the same time. For example, if you were you have a lot of technical words that you use regularly, and you wanted to add a batch of them. There is a way to do this, and he goes into that further on the article. I'll link to that article in the show notes. I used to do this in the old AppleWorks program on the Apple II. There was some software that would allow you to go in. Of course, you could add words one at a time, but you could also, with some software, create your own dictionary that added technical words or anything else that you used. And it gave you the opportunity to batch edit those files. So I'll link to that. You'll find that helpful if you've inadvertently added some incorrect terminology into the OS dictionary. All right, another one. This is one that I'm still kind of reading through, but I saw this just a few minutes before the show started, and wanted to pass it on to those of you who might be affected by this or might be contemplating doing something about this. Some users are reporting that when they have their iPhones repaired, if they have an iPhone, say for example, like the iPhone 6 that has the Touch ID home button, there where, for example, you can unlock your iPhone with a fingerprint. Some users have reported that when they have their device repaired, either by having the home button repaired or in some cases a screen repair, that in subsequent updates, the subsequent OS updates will somehow essentially brick the device. It causes it to generate an error when you try to use it, error number 53 message, thus in effect bricking the iPhone. So choose your repair facility carefully. If you're going to do the repair yourself, be aware of this as a possibility. And just wanted to pass that on to you. There's more detail in the article that I was reading. I'll link to that as well. As we usually do, we have all the show notes, which will be up probably a little bit later this evening or early tomorrow morning at the latest. Also, on the repair front, this one comes from, let's see, where did this particular note come from? Let me click on that real quick and get you the reference. It's Mac Rumors has a link up on their site about repairs to the Mac Pro line, to some of the graphics cards. As you will recall, the last real update to that one so far was at the end of 2013. So if you have one of those, that design, the trash can design that dates to late 2013 Mac Pros, if they were manufactured between February of 2015 and April 2015, you may be seeing some distorted video, no video, really unstable systems, restarts, freezings, shutdown, or even some inability to start up the system. Apple or an authorized service provider can repair eligible Mac Pro models affected by these video issues free of charge until May 30th of 2018. According to Apple, the turnaround time on this particular type of repair is 3 to 5 days, and both graphic cards need to be replaced on the Mac Pros exhibiting these symptoms. The AMD FirePro D500 on the high-end model and the D700 on the built-to-order GPUs are affected. So that's something to keep in mind. As I say, these are the 2013 design, but they're manufactured between February and April of 2015 because that design really hasn't changed significantly. over the years. Uh, so keep that in mind if you're running one of those machines. I do not have one of those. I went with an iMac instead, but that's something to keep in mind for those of you that are fortunate enough to have one of those machines. From Macworld, our good buddy Jason Snell points out he's taking a look at some of the issues around declines in iPad sales. Now, when the iPad originally debuted, Apple was moving something on the order of 80 million units a year at its height. Over 10 of the last 11 quarters, that number has dropped down to the point where they are currently shipping roughly 48 million units. Now, 48 million units is still a lot of iPads, but Jason took a look at some things that he feels might be contributing to that drop. Among them, I won't go through all of these, but one of them is that they didn't release a new iPad Air over the holiday, and that might have prompted some people to stay away from buying one. As we move along and screens on iPhones have gotten larger, iPhones and other smartphones, to reach that class of device that are now called phablets, some people are deciding they don't need an iPad. Also, people are not needing to upgrade their iPads as often, unless, of course, you do like I do and crack the screen. You know, I'm two for three so far. I've cracked 2 screens and dented the back of my current iPad slightly, although it seems to have survived nicely. I know for me, my iPad use from my own personal experience has changed a little bit. I still use my current iPad, although with the 16 gigabyte design, I'm being a little careful about what I put on it, a little more careful than when I had the 64 gig iPad 1. But for me, I am still using it a lot, although not as much as I did initially. And part of that is because of where my computer is now located. It's kind of become the center of everything, and I can be in one place and do a lot of different things that I used to do on the iPad. And speaking of which, the gang over at Tech Radar, and I'll link to this article. I haven't read it yet, but I just kind of glanced through it. Has some ideas about using iPhones and to control your Mac, and you could apply a lot of this to use of the iPad. I know one of the things that I did with my iPad before my iMac was in a convenient place was I would a lot of times be sitting in the living room watching something on television, and I would, the Mac is in the other room, which we were using as an office, and I could start a process going on the Mac and monitor that process on my iPad, make changes, et cetera, using some, there were several different programs that would do this, and it worked quite nicely. It did require that both machines, both the iPad and the Mac, be on the same network, but some of those pieces of software actually allowed you, if you set your router correctly, to basically poke a hole in your network and accept input from an iPad, basically anywhere, to monitor what was going on your Mac and be able to change it. I didn't need the capability to do that from outside my network, but that does exist. And so Jason's ideas about the iPad sales are well worth a quick read. I have a link to those as well. Uh, I think we're going to see probably um, an uptick in sales at some point. That's not a difficult prediction to make. Uh, I think it's strictly a matter of how long is it before you come out with a design that a lot of people just decide they have to have, or when a lot of people decide, hey, I've gotten as much use as I can squeeze out of my old iPad, it's time to upgrade. That eventually happens to you. I know for me, I upgraded my first generation iPad in part because of a cracked screen. But even had I not cracked the screen, it was reaching a point where some of the software that I would like to have run was not working due to the iOS limitations on that device. So we'll see how that goes. And I encourage you to take a look at that and see if you think Jason's got some good ideas, whether he's on the ball or not. Uh, Also, along a different note, Kirk, the iTunes guy, Kirk McLaren over at Macworld, has a piece on his website about um, addressing some of the problems that El Capitan and Apple TV users have with motion sickness. Some people who are really prone to motion sickness are having some issues with the El Capitan update and the current incarnation of the Apple TV. Um, and that generally involves interface animation and then the way some of that stuff moves. Granted, not everybody has this. I don't know what the numbers are in terms of how many people serve this, but Kurt mentions he takes this as an opportunity to also look at things like fonts and other design issues in in the iOS world. And I must say, um, there are times when I have wished for a little more control over font sizes, particularly in some third-party apps on the iPhone, on the iPad. I don't surf a lot on my phone because as big as the screen on the iPhone 6 is, I find a lot of layouts, if I squeeze them down to the point where I can see a lot of the page, it's too small to read. And if I adapt it to a level where my vision can deal with it, then I have to do too much scrolling. So, and I understand that you can't, when you're designing an OS, you can't control for every possibility in terms of what users might need in terms of adaptive settings. But I have to tell you, I am waiting for the day when users can make some adjustments to the menus in the operating system, both on the Mac and on the iPhone, on the iOS devices. I'll tell you from my own experience, um, with the 2015 Retina iMacs, when I first started using one, I had a little trouble with the menus on programs and still do occasionally. Now, on the web pages, I've come up with a zoom level in Safari using CSS that the where a style sheet, I've got a style sheet setting that gives me a level of text that I like, and I don't have to keep adjusting it on every website. But you still have the problem where the menus are uh, not as readable as perhaps people would like. Some people find the dark menu option helpful. Some don't. I've tried it both ways. I alternate between the two. I'll use dark menus for a while and then decide, that's kind of annoying, and I'll go back to the normal way. And then, all of a sudden, a couple weeks will go by, and geez, I like the dark menu better. That's an easy fix. Not so easy for me anyway. I've gotten used to with the Retina displays set at its standard um, for its best effect. It works well for me in most things, but I have discovered that when I'm in either the App Store or the iTunes Music Store, I find the text really small to read when I'm looking at the descriptions of albums or looking at the descriptions of apps. I find some of that text really small to read. So I have to go into displays, uh, bump the text size up a notch, which takes my monitor out of Retina mode. It's still pretty good visually, but at least it's big enough that I can read it a little bit better. Um, I'd like a little more control over font sizes and things like iTunes. Now, I don't know with that interface. I don't know how you do that without the text getting all cluttered and etc. It probably would mean a major rewrite of the iTunes code. But hey, I'm game for that. I've made it known before that I thought there were some things about iTunes that could be improved. Like I say, I really like the idea of having a little more control. That for me has been an easy switch to go into the displays pane and adjust the resolution. I wish I didn't have to do that, but that's easier than squinting at the screen. One of these days, I'm going to take a look at AppleScript or Automator and see if there's a way I can create a hotkey that would do that for me by pushing one button and then push another one to bring it back into the high resolution Retina mode when I'm done with reading the text in those programs. I find that in iTunes at least, for my music, it's not that big a deal because I have my albums in cover view and I can tell immediately which album is which. But when you go down looking for a specific track, then sometimes those can be a little difficult to read because of some of the contrast colors in the background as it changes to reflect the album color. So that's something that the gang in Cupertino, I know there's millions of them watching this broadcast. That's something for you guys to work on. But anyway, that'll give you some ideas. And as I say, Kirk, one of the reasons I like reading Kirk's stuff is he tends to have a very balanced view of the Mac world. He'll tell you when he thinks Apple is doing something well, but he'll also tell you when he thinks there's something that could be done better. And this probably fits into the we can do better category. So hopefully you'll find that some interesting reading. I certainly do when I get a chance to read through his stuff. Sometimes I'll go a couple of days and not read his site, and then all of a sudden, when I get his newsletter, something will catch my attention. As far as our own forum goes, we have discussions about backups going on. That's important. I encourage you to take a look at that. We have a lot of good tips relative to, we've had a number of questions recently about creating boot sticks, USB boot sticks to boot El Capitan and some of the other operating systems. I personally don't create a lot of these, although I may do one here soon. The reason that I don't create a lot of these is I'm running some cloning software so that in an emergency, I can boot off of the clone. So I have less of a need for a USB stick than some people might. I want to remind you, and if you say, well, I'm running Time Machine, let me remind you, this is something that comes up on the forum a lot. Time Machine is not a bootable clone. So in the event of your hard drive crashing and burning or some other major catastrophe, you would have to reinstall the OS and then restore from Time Machine. So reinstalling the OS would involve uh, some sequence of events similar to using Command R to boot to the recovery partition, reinstalling the OS, and then going back to Time Machine and restoring your data. For me, I've been sold on cloning for a long time. And I had been using a carbon copy cloner for quite a while. I've also used SuperDuper for cloning, but I had been using carbon copy cloner just because it kind of makes sense to me. I'd used it for a while, gotten away from it. And then a couple of years ago, I had something cinch for me the usability of cloning in general. I was running a Mac Pro at the time, one of the big heavy aluminum jobs. And I had a hard drive failure midweek and just really did not have the time to spend a lot of time troubleshooting. I had some things to do at work. And to be honest with you, when I came in the afternoon, the last thing I felt like doing that day was troubleshooting whether I was having a hard drive issue or whether I was having a graphic board issue. So the first thing I did, I had a clone already set to go. Fortunately, I had created a clone about 2 days before. I booted from the clone, and literally in the time that it took to boot the machine off an external drive, I was back up and running. I ran that way for 2 days, 3 days, until the weekend came and I had a little time to troubleshoot. After that, I was convinced that I had a hard drive issue. It wasn't a graphic board problem. It wasn't a logic board problem, because once I got the machine booted, it ran like a top. So come Monday, I call Apple. They were nice enough to cross ship me a drive, a replacement drive, because it was under Apple Care. They shipped a new drive. I shipped them back the defective drive. And then while I was packing up the defective drive, I started cloning from my external drive back to this new blank drive that Apple had sent me. So in the whole process, because of having that clone available on the external drive, in the whole process, maybe I lost 20 minutes of actual downtime. I'm discounting the troubleshooting time where I was trying to figure out whether it was a hard drive, logic board, whatever. But in terms of once I decided what the problem was, maybe I lost 20 minutes plus the time that it took to clone back. But while the cloning was going on, I could do other things. So that sold me on the need for keeping up a current clone. An alternative to that is to keep a minimal install of the operating system on a hard drive and then restore from Time Machine. It is imperative, though, that when you do this cloning, whatever your backup strategy is, be it Time Machine, cloning, anything of that nature, keep those backups current. The longer it's been since you did a backup, the more data you stand to lose in the event of some kind of disaster. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of good information on the forum about backing up. There's a lot of good information just in general use, tips and tricks. People have questions about specific apps, so be sure to ask those questions. You might run a search before you ask the question. There's a good possibility the question has been asked, although I personally find the search function kind of difficult sometimes. Seems to be a little cantankerous, either that or I'm a little cantankerous, one or the other. I don't know if the search engine doesn't understand me or I don't understand it, but sometimes it just doesn't generate things that I know are there in the forum. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. And looks like that's about going to run through everything that I had for tonight, folks. Hope that you enjoyed the tips and tricks. And as I say, I'll have links to all these articles up in the show notes in a little bit. Hopefully you'll find that tip, particularly the one on fixing spell check errors if you've inadvertently added some words that you didn't intend to. I think I have done that. Not enough to cause me a problem right now and really annoy me, but it's nice to know how to fix it. So that's going to do it for this week. Until next week, this is Sylvester Rock, aka Sly Dude on the forum. I'll be seeing you in the forum, and feel free to post a comment to the show thread and let me know if you have any ideas for improvement. And we'll see you next week, guys.